Hello, and welcome to my penultimate Instagram Live in my summer series, all around creating how we create better harmony between our well-being and being online. So in today's chat, I am joined by Kate LLewellyn. I hope I've pronounced that right. Please do correct me, Kate, when you come on, if I got that wrong. Kate is a content writer and a consultant, and she's the head clubber of the Content Club. So I'm just going to let Kate in now, and hopefully this works, because last week in the session with any second now, Kate will join. Hi Erin, I can see Erin online. Nice to see you. Thank you for joining. Kate, hi! How are you?
Why are we still so shocked when the technology works?
Well, because 9 times out of 10 it doesn't.
Totally.
This feels strange. I'm at the top. I'm normally at the bottom.
Oh, okay.
I don't know how that worked, but anyway, lovely to see you, and thank you so much for joining me this evening.
No, thank you for having me.
I think it's going to be a really interesting chat, and I can't wait to get into it all. So, to start with, probably just better explain that we're going to be talking a lot around boundaries, particularly around setting boundaries when we're online, and why putting boundaries in place are essential for basically our mental health and our well-being. So I think it's a really important subject, something that I have struggled massively over the years, managed to crack it in some places, still very much working on it in others. So really looking forward to this chat. So in order to get started, do you want to tell us a little bit about what you do and what inspired you to create the Content Club?
Yeah, sure. So my background is in academic publishing, and then having taken redundancy from that, I decided sort of see what happens, do a bit of freelance work, and I actually ended up becoming a professional content writer for websites and blogs, and doing obviously a bit of social media for people. And then the classic of COVID hitting, and I just realised that I wanted to help more people. As a copywriter, there's only one of me, and I didn't know how to do that. And also at the same time, I had clients who lost all of their income, all of their custom overnight. And again, it was like, well, how can I help them in a really affordable way? And so essentially, it was the online version of getting them all together in the room at the same time, telling them all the same things, answering all of their questions in one go, and making it kind of, a bit of a community spirit to keep us going with our marketing and with our content creation. And that is the very short version of how then the Content Club was born, which is now a fully online membership. The kind of primary element of it is that we get together on a quarterly basis to do a co-working planning session, and it's very much about making sure that we've got a content plan, we know what we're creating and why. And then in between those planning sessions, we have regular content clinics where people can come in, because as we know, social media likes to change all of the time, digital marketing best practices like to shift, so it's my job to help people navigate all of that, hopefully keep them on course with those plans that they put in place. And I always love inviting like guest experts and things like that to come in as well, to try and, keep us up to date as much as possible.
Fantastic, that's brilliant. So I mean, I've got 2 initial points. So one is that my next session next Thursday at midday is with the lovely Penny Pickering. I don't know if you know Penny. She is the founder of Co-work Crew. So really interesting that the community thing is a bit of a theme here, which is fascinating. And then I'm just curious as well how it went from being something that was very much a pandemic thing to how it looked then compared to how it looks now.
So it has actually, and again, it really ties into what we're talking about. So when I first set it up, I thought it was going to be on the craze of like the online courses. Everyone was kind of into online courses and learning, and I was really obsessed about making sure that I had this full library of things that videos and resources that people could use. And it was really interesting as we came out of lockdown and life sort of got back to, let's say, normal. That wasn't what people wanted. What it came down to was community, was accountability, was that just, rather than going down the Google rabbit hole of like, what do I do and what should I be talking about? It was like, oh, it'd be lovely just to be able to ask someone. And hence, the things like the content clinics, have changed rapidly. And I say the focus is so much more now on these co-working planning sessions and this bringing people together to be able to ask their questions and learn from each other, not from me, much more learn from each other rather than the straight me teaching people how to do Instagram sort of thing.
Brilliant. And how many people do you sort of get in one sort of session?
So on a really good, we've sort of around 10 people come along, which is wonderful. Obviously with the quarterly planning sessions, it's a bit higher because that's sort of like the key thing in the diary. So, but it's really nice because it's not so big that, there's not an opportunity to speak to each other and also have your questions answered.
Fantastic. Oh, I love that. It sounds fantastic. So where did, I suppose, the boundaries and mental health come into things? How did that?
So it basically came up for, well, the two things really. First of all, I just noticed that in the content club with my clubbers, in the clinics, it was very rarely, I can't do content or I don't know how to do X or Y. It was always, I've got nothing to say. I'm just adding to the noise. Like, oh, social media is such a chore. And when I sort of would ask why, it was always because it was like, oh, I've got to put myself out there. It feels icky. And I started to realize how much social media particularly, but even content creation more widely, is so tied in with our mental health, with our confidence, with all the classic imposter syndrome feelings that we have, all the comparison that we do, looking at other people, and even like both with kind of a competitor's side of things, people comparing each other, but also following the so-called experts, the six-figure people and all that, and that affects as well, and sort of saying, well, who am I to say anything in my industry when there are people out there who are these amazing influencers, etc., etc. So I just really realized that when the more and more I spoke to people about their marketing, as I say, it was never just about the content, the scheduling, the thing. It was always, there was a deeper element to what was holding them back, what was a barrier, those classic limiting beliefs.
So interesting. Like, I hadn't kind of like put two and two together in terms of, yeah, that really being the crux of the issue. So that's really, really fascinating.
And then I was just going to say, what then sort of followed that up with is that I also run a mental health and small business one-day conference, hence the interest. And again, the first year we ran it, because I was helping a counsellor and psychotherapist who was obviously the expert in all of those things. I was like, well, how do I sort of bring my knowledge in? So we actually did a panel session on marketing and mental health. And again, we had a room full of 60 small business owners, and they're all saying the same things, and it's all like resonating with them, and they're all saying they're not good enough, and they're all saying, and again, it was just like, wow, even, even in this setting when we're talking about everything to do with mental health and well-being, marketing came up as one of the biggest issues for so many people.
Definitely. I can totally resonate. I mean, like, being a social media manager, I have to put myself out there, because otherwise, A, my clients can't find me, and B, I'm telling them to do things that I'm not doing. Doesn't look particularly great. So you do have to learn to kind of just go, right, I'm just going to throw that out there and then leave it for a few hours without coming back and checking it, because otherwise you get massive paranoia.
Yeah, absolutely. But also you do such an important job for people who just can't, don't even know where to start or can't bear to put themselves out there. Because, I remember from like my content writing, I used to love writing people's about pages. They talk to me about all they've done. I'm like, oh, wow, this is amazing, and they're all like, is it? Like, no, it's not that big a deal. Like, no, I'm like, no. And I would write their about page in sort of 5 minutes because I'm like gushing about how brilliant they are. But we all know it's so much harder when you're trying to do it about yourself. So yeah, like what you do and how you support those clients that otherwise they probably wouldn't do it themselves. So it's so important.
Yeah, it definitely is. And I do think it certainly takes the pressure off people who either don't have the mental strength to constantly be putting content out online, but also it does let them focus on their clients, which when they're predominantly working in the health, wellbeing and leisure sectors, they need to be out there working with clients, not faffing around with their marketing.
Absolutely.
So yeah, no, that's really interesting. I thought of something else then, but it's left my brain. It was something to do with Beth, who is a common contact of ours. But I'm going to come back to it. I will remember before the end of this session. So, in your experience, Kate, what are some of the most common mental health challenges people face when creating or consuming content online? I mean, maybe perhaps we've covered quite a lot around the creating side. What about the consuming side?
So I think the top one is, I think I've already mentioned it, but is that imposter syndrome, that imposter. We actually, following one of the mental health conferences, we now talk about imposter feeling because it's something that comes and goes. It's not a syndrome. But yeah, that imposter feeling that as you go through those silly little voices in your head that actually are very real and should be taken very seriously in terms of, I'm not good enough. Who am I? Look at this person. They're so much better than me, more experienced, more knowledgeable. Put in your own word of choice. But then also is that, I'm going to talk about sort of with boundaries, being very intentional with your social media use. And I think that's another bit of it. It's that doom scrolling, again, another sort of common term, but where you almost don't realize you're doing it, where you're opening your phone, you're flicking open a social media app and you're just there looking and you're not even really consuming that content. It's not doing anything for you. And this is one of my big, bugbears of social media is I'm like, it should do something for you. It should engage if you're a massive TikTok fan of silly dances. It should, it should be educating you if you're on YouTube and you're learning about stuff. That's fab. But when you are just doom scrolling, when you're almost feeding that limiting belief, that desire for negativity, I'm sad to say, that's when, that is when, that's not great and that's not helping you. And if you can step back and identify if you are starting to do that on more and more of a regular occasion, then that's a really healthy thing to do too, and go, right, I need to start thinking about how I use social media for me, not let it almost absorb me.
Yeah, that's such an interesting point about that intentional use, because it's come up in quite a few of the sessions that I've run so far. In that, I know unfortunately a few people this year who've gone through various different bereavements, and they found themselves doom scrolling, and they've gone straight from noticing that they're doom scrolling to then completely cutting out using social media and deleting the apps. And my brain automatically is like, but there's got to be another way. Like we shouldn't have to get rid of the apps, because let's face it, they are, whether we like it or not, a huge part of our lives. They can be very informative, and if you follow the right people, you can learn so much from them.
Yep.
So I guess my question is, if there are people out there who are on the brink of going, I'm just going to delete this app, how do they become more intentional? How do they get over that hurdle?
So my biggest tip and my first tip always is what I call curate your news feed. So stop letting the algorithm tell you what to look at. So the quickest way, the easiest way is, as you scroll through, again, really intentionally, if there is anyone that triggers you, any content that you're like, I hate this, this is pants, this is rubbish, this makes me feel rubbish about myself, it's boring, don't just scroll past. Go in and unfollow that person. All of the platforms allow you to unfollow now. Obviously, you can completely disconnect with people if if they've got no influence on you, you're not connected in any other way in real life or what have you. But if you just think, oh no, I don't want to do that, I don't want to upset somebody or something, simply unfollow them. There's no harm in that whatsoever. And I often say that for business owners, with the old competitors, unfollow them. If it's stressing you out, it's not going to affect your content. We can do competitor research, and again, in a very intentional way, but they don't need to be there in your newsfeed all of the time. So that's always my top tip. Just totally curate it. And again, depending on what platform you use, learn how best to do that. So for example, with Facebook, you can actually have different feeds. X has a similar functionality. TikTok too. You can kind of have feeds based on certain subjects or areas. So just, learn about your favorite platform or your favored platforms, and just create that newsfeed so that, like you said, it becomes an engaging, educational and or entertaining place for you to be.
Brilliant. I love that. Absolutely. That's so good. I think, just going on from that briefly, I had a conversation with a friend the other day. I know she was hoping to catch up on the replay, so hopefully she will hear this. But her question was around, she's got friends that she follows who 9 times out of 10 love seeing their content, but they are particularly feeling quite strongly about some of the global events that are going on out there at the moment. So their question was, how do I manage that? Because I don't want to unfollow them. They are friends, want to see their content, but I don't want to see what they're posting all of the time. I think that one's quite a tricky one to navigate. I know you can, particularly on Instagram, there is a function, I think, where you can still follow someone without seeing their posts. So that was the only thing I could kind of think of. But is there anything?
Yes. So there's a couple. So there is, you're absolutely right. Some of the platforms allow you to pause for a short time. Facebook particularly allows you to do that. So that might be something you can unfollow, follow for a certain amount of time, and then they'll come back in. You can even get very sort of, I don't know, administrative about it, which is that especially if a certain global event, a political event is happening and you wish to, like, you can unfollow them and then put a note in your calendar to say, I'll go back, you know, I'll follow, refollow from this date. I know that sounds, but you know, sometimes I think that can work quite well. And then my final thing again is be intentional about your social media use. So instead of relying, and there's another bugbear of mine, stop relying on your newsfeed to provide content for you. So if this friend, you know, like you said, most of their stuff is really lovely. When you are, and we'll talk about time boundaries, but when you're having your social media time, and especially for personal use, you know, and you're just going through and having a look, go to that friend's profile. Have a quick look what they posted. If they posted something you didn't want to see, you can just be like, oh, you know, and go again. But do you know what I mean? Again, you're in that mindset. You know you might see something you don't want to, but equally you can scroll past that and maybe see the picture of their lovely holiday or their cute kids or whatever you were actually looking for. So I think, again, it's that, you know, we've so sucked into this sort of thing. You open the app and you go through the news feed, and we just need to break that. We don't have to do that. We can use social media in our own way. And as I say, you know, I'm trying to think of a bit like a news site or what have you, where you go and check out particular stories, or, you know, go and check out particular people and consume their content when you want to.
That is such a good idea. You know, I wouldn't even have thought about that. I just, you know, even when I was scrolling, I do just scroll, see what's on my feed. I never, unless I'm looking up someone's profile for the first time, I never really go to people's profiles. You know, I just go on my feed.
So funny enough, it came up for me was since owning a business where you are on social media all the time. Obviously, a lot of my newsfeed is business stuff and fellow business owners. So I started to miss all my like friends content, and it really did happen by accident. Which was it was a bit of like a university friendship get together, and I thought, I don't think they've posted anything for ages. So I went and looked at a couple, and was like, oh, I have. Wasn't showing up in my feed because that's not what I'm looking. You know, the good old algorithm is showing me all this business stuff and content stuff. So I've missed it. And so it was like, oh, that was lovely. You know, so I did a quick catch up, and then when I saw them in person, I could be like, oh yeah. I think the other thing that's quite nice is we now live in a world where you used to, didn't you, sort of went out, and if a friend or whatever had posted something, they kind of had expected you to see it. But weirdly, with the amount of sponsored traffic and all that jazz, and again, you know, you can create your feed so you only see friends' content if you want to. But in this world, I think actually that expectation has also gone a bit lower. So that's a good thing too. I don't think everyone sort of quite expects you to have seen everything they've posted because they know it's so much harder to follow.
Definitely, 100%. And I've certainly noticed a lot more communities are going more onto like communicating via WhatsApp and stuff like that, rather than, or other apps like Circle, rather than having, you know, an Instagram or a Facebook page or that kind of stuff, which I think is probably really helpful. Although they too can create a lot of noise, but we can talk about that separately. So going back to like the word boundaries, in our circles, we use the word a lot. It very much sits within that well-being content kind of world. How would you define boundaries when it comes to social media and online work for those that might not be as aware of what we're talking about?
So a little bit, like I said already, please reframe social media as a tool for you. So that's the first boundary that we put around it. We go, it's just social media. We kick it off its pedestal. It's nothing big. It's nothing that exciting. It's just another app, and we use it, I say, when we want to and for us. So that's the first thing. And then I do genuinely believe in a time boundary. So set certain, not necessarily exact minutes, but sort of certain times of day. It's a bit like, I'm sure if anyone worked in corporate back in the kind of like early 2000s, it was what we all did with email. Do you remember? You used to get like email training on what to do, and it's a bit the same. I really think we still need to do that. So I personally have 10 minutes while I'm drinking my coffee in the morning, and I have a lovely scroll, totally guilt-free, with LinkedIn. And that's what I know I'm doing. That I know that I'm just scrolling. I may well create a post while I'm there. I will comment on a few things, but again, intentional use. But I give myself 10-15 minutes with a cup of coffee, and I'm looking through it. I then don't actually, put my phone to one side. In an absolute ideal world, I don't have any notifications on. So that's another tip in terms of boundaries. And I will then leave it until at least lunchtime. And if I'm being really good, it will be my 10-minute cup of tea. There's a relationship here. Cup of tea at the end of the day, for me, mid-afternoon. And again, I'll go in, check primarily messages, any comments or anything on my content, and maybe a quick, scroll through just to see if anything's popped up during the day. But I do think, I know it's so much easier said than done, but having that kind of, just again, intentional time when I am going to be on social media, for some, and definitely again for me, it might be something I also set aside a bit of time in the evening. Again, maybe do more like my personal social media, checking up with friends and family and things like that. The thing is just that sort of mindset with this is what I'm doing and when, and I don't need to be there on all the time. And again, for anyone running a business or whatever, just like you wouldn't be expected to answer your email within 3 minutes, you're not expected to comment back or reply or send a DM or whatever, it is absolutely fine to do that, throughout the day, or even a day, a week in between. If you have no idea how long you're spending on social media, there's loads of like apps and timers, and even within the apps themselves, but also the phones themselves will tell you what you're doing and when. Check it out, go and have a look, because I think a lot of people, the problem with setting a time boundary is that they will tell themselves, oh, I spend 5 minutes.
Yeah.
And maybe it's a little bit longer than that.
Yeah, I've got an iPhone, so there is something automatically on the iPhone that tells you how much time you spent online and in what category it falls each week. And then I've got the Instagram one as well, where I can't remember what I've got it set for, but for every day I go over my limit and it comes up with an option to bypass it, and I'm forever clicking that because I'm like, oh, just 5 more minutes. But I am strict, because when that does come up, I'm like, right, 5 more minutes and then I'm done. But perfect. I do know I have quite a lot of willpower.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And we're all human. And sometimes, we have a lazy day or we're not feeling very well, but as I say, from a day to day, setting those boundaries, I think it is all about, like, for me, it's all about like what, I'm on this app. What do I want to achieve from it? Do I want to achieve just, I used to call it chewing gum for the brain, just something really, or am I here to make some connections, create some content? Just like having that second before you open the app to sort of think, what is this going to do for me? A great question.
Definitely. And this is, so I'm going to go off piece a little bit now, but with, obviously we're both small business owners. Do you have a separate personal, we'll use Instagram as an example, but do you have a separate Instagram account for your personal life, or does everything merge under one account?
So yeah, no, actually Instagram is a great example for me. I have a completely private lockdown personal page, and I really like that. And actually going back to the whole like following your friends content, I literally only, accept requests or connect with people I actually know, family, things like that. And for me, funnily enough, again, talking of intention, it's a bit of like a memory bank for me. I share photos, of great holidays, special moments, etc. And it's kind of a backup to my photo album, and a way of just having a nice place again for me to go and just scroll back through. If no one looks at it, no one looked at it. So very intentional. I don't use any hashtags. I don't, as I say, accept any requests from people I don't know, etc. So I do have that, and then I have my professional page here. Funnily enough, the reason I have that is because my Facebook profile got too messy and murky. I have got lots of business people on my Facebook page, and I have a business Facebook page, I have a personal Facebook page, but I also have friends who are business owners on the, and it all got a bit messy. And I just thought, I don't mind sharing certain elements of my personal life. So if I, that's sometimes on my Facebook page, but generally, yeah, I have that sort of special Instagram section that is just for me, and I really like that. And again, it's a very small curated news feed because I follow very, very few people. So when I want to do a bit of personal Instagram inspiration, I can use that profile. When I want to do all the business stuff, then you'll obviously find me here under at the Content Consultancy.
Fantastic. That's so I like, that's one thing I probably should have implemented myself. In fact, the weird thing is I did start off with 2 accounts. I had a personal account and I had a business account, but I found that the 2 were very much overlapping in some ways. And I was like, I don't understand now why I've got 2 accounts, because a lot of the stuff I'm posting on one, I'm posting on the other. So I did morph it all into one account. And I think probably from a business point of view, that's where it doesn't probably attract the right audience all the time, because I also love my photography, so I throw out loads of photos, which obviously you do on Instagram anyway, but they're ones that I've taken as my passion projects rather than business focused, and then I just throw in the occasional business post. But then I have to really question myself, am I using Instagram to try and get clients? Actually, am I using LinkedIn more intentionally to get those clients, which probably these days I am. So yeah,
but that's fine, isn't it? Yeah, it is a difficult one. And I would say it's fine, because actually you're probably using Instagram as a really nice way for people to get to know you. And then if they want to work with you, that's lovely too. I think it's absolutely fine. The other thing to say is, again, the joy of social media, set up another account. If you suddenly decide, actually, I really do want a really private lockdown account, I don't know, get a new puppy and you think, I don't really want everyone to see, I don't know, whatever it might be.
Probably more likely to be a new boyfriend in my case.
Yeah, exactly, whatever it might be.
Out there to the universe.
And again, that's the thing. I think that's the thing. I often call it with the content, I call it the content treadmill. And we end up on this treadmill. And ideally, the treadmill is this lovely, really flat, even, nice, we just put out a post and we put out content and we love it and we're enjoying ourselves. And this is actually quite nice. We're doing some good for our business. It's like good little bit of exercise for our business, and we're sticking out content. And then unfortunately, what can happen is that the gradient goes up and it gets harder and it feels like a chore, and we don't want it. And unfortunately, and also the treadmill gets a bit quicker because we fall a bit behind. And then, and we fall off completely, which happens to people. They just stop posting completely, or they're just trying to keep up. And the problem is when you're going that speed uphill, it's really hard to step back and reflect and go, is social media working for me now?
Yeah.
Or am I almost a prisoner to it? Yeah. And so again, you've just given a really great example. You're thinking, I'm not sure. The wonderful thing is that anytime we can go, I'm going to post a bit less. I'm going to post a bit differently. I'm going to try something new. I'm going to set up a new profile.
Absolutely. 100%. It is all about taking that control back, isn't it? It does not, I was going to say it doesn't own us. I do have my doubts as to how much it does own us, in the weird world that we're living in. But before we wrap up, Kate, I wanted to come back to the Beth thing that I mentioned before. So it's when you were talking about the About Me pages, and you mentioned imposter syndrome. And when I first started to work with Beth, we were having this conversation about my apparent lack of confidence. And I was reeling off all this stuff that I've done in my life. And she was like, Becky, you are not a confident person. You are a confident person. You just have imposter syndrome. Yeah. And the minute she told me that and she explained what imposter syndrome was, just to put a label on how I was feeling, was unbelievable. And it totally took a whole load of weight off my shoulders. So it was just really interesting that you brought that up and it flagged that in my brain. Good old Beth.
Yeah, good old Beth. And you are so not alone. My example of always that is that I sort of see people, their content or something, and they get in touch with me, and the first thing they always say, obviously, is my content's rubbish, isn't it? And I'm like, no, it's not rubbish. And then I start do that classic, video call chat, and you go, hey, what do you do? And this new person blossoms. They tell me, like you said, they say all this experience and all these things they've done,
Yeah.
and they've done some amazing travel thing or charity thing, and they've worked with somebody incredible. And it always makes me laugh, because I just sit there and go, where's this person in
Yeah.
your content? And they're like, oh, but I've got nothing to say. And you're just like, and it's lovely. It's absolutely lovely. And exactly that, imposter syndrome, fear of like being judged, fear of that horrible thing that we've all been taught not to show off. Don't show off, Kate. Don't be too loud. Don't be too, up yourself. Those horrible terms. And unfortunately, it does get all melded into, unfortunately, us just not shouting about our brilliant
Yeah.
experiences and our knowledge. And it, worse than that, we dilute it, don't we? We belittle it. We use the word just. I just went to university,
Oh,
or I just did that qualification, or
why anyone invented that word? I
I
mean,
just work with small business owners, it's so upsetting. And again, intentional content creation use, intentional social media use. Let's break free. Let's address imposter syndrome. It's absolutely real. It's absolutely, those feelings are really valid. Limiting beliefs too. But again, I think we can overcome them, and we can be a bit bolder, and we can be a bit braver. And
definitely.
especially when we start thinking about social media working for us, not the other way around.
Absolutely. And I do think, like, certainly from a personal experience, just putting a label on it, and now I can go, oh, I'm slipping into imposter syndrome, and just sitting with it a minute, and then I can just let it go.
Yeah.
Rather than I used to sit there with this big dark cloud over my head for days after someone had perhaps said something that I had taken completely out of context, and I would really start doubting everything in my life, because it just spirals, doesn't it? It's an
Oh,
absolute beast, but it is, I agree, manageable, and you can definitely do stuff about it.
absolutely. Absolutely.
So before we wrap up, Kate, just two quick things. I just was curious about your content club. Is it a space just for women, or is it for everybody?
So it is for everybody. I will be honest, in case any gents are watching, it is a majority female membership, but that is not by design. Anyone is absolutely welcome. But as I've said, we do the way we approach content, and that is very much from a confidence side of things, from getting a plan in place, from finding a way that makes sure that marketing, works for you. So perhaps there is unfortunately some gender bias there because of those issues that, we've talked about tonight. But yeah, no, it's open to all. I say it's primarily solo business owners, small business owners. I do have a few people that work with social media managers and VAs, and they use the space to, educate themselves, to help basically get a plan in place. So you guys can be very grateful when they turn up with a lovely plan and they know what they want. But yeah, generally it's for those people that maybe are just not quite ready to outsource, or aren't quite financially ready to do that. It's, it's a nice stopgap to hopefully help them get into that nice, easy content treadmill.
Fantastic. That's so useful, Kate. Thank you so much for joining me this evening. And is there anything, have you got a final message, or other than for everyone to come and join the Creator Club, the Content Club?
Actually, yeah, I will just mention, so I am developing a kind of a new area to my business, which is kind of like, it's a little bit like a prequel to the Content Club. So I'm developing some resources, a course, and I also have a free audio series if anyone's watching would like to give it a try. It's all around content confidence. So it's basically giving you back that ownership that you can create content, but perhaps you just don't have the confidence in you to be able to do it in that bold and sort of brave way that you'd like to. So yeah, if anyone would like to talk to me about that, I am like all ears, because it's something, an area I'm developing. It's new, it fits really nicely with the Content Club, but as I say, if it's something that even the word create a content plan makes you shrivel up and die, then do check it out. As I say, it's just there is a free audio series available which starts for you to be able to reflect a little bit on how your feelings around content. So yeah, find that at www.thecontentconsultancy.com / and it's like content confidence audios. I'm sure we can put it somewhere.
Brilliant,
But
fantastic.
yeah, and as I say, just DM me. I'd love to hear, and like Becky yourself too, I'd love to hear what people think about that and whether that resonates, because it's something that, as you can tell, I'm quite passionate about.
100%. No, that's been brilliant. Thank you so much, Kate, for joining me today. Sorry we ran slightly over. None of these sessions have finished on time. That's a lesson I've definitely learned for next time.
But that's because they're brilliant, absolutely brilliant. So yeah, don't you worry.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Kate. So next Thursday is my last Instagram live of this series, when I'm going to be joined by Penny Pickering, who is the founder of Co-Work Crew. So please come along and join me if you can. If not, there will be a replay. As with this lovely chat that I've had with Kate, this will appear on my feed shortly too. So hopefully you can consume it there if you haven't had a chance to watch this evening, and it will go up on my YouTube channel as well. And Kate, I'll make sure all the links to your website, etc., are put on the stories chat, the stories feed as well. So thank you ever so much for joining me, Kate, and thank you to everyone for watching. See you next time.
Bye.
Bye.